right, so Q&A. Let's see. I'm gonna.
Don't be nervous.
No, I'm not. I hope you guys aren't. I'm gonna start off with a couple of questions, and then I'm gonna throw it out to you guys. So think of some really smart questions to ask.
Or
right?
really dumb ones.
I guess get those thinking caps on. All right, so I guess I'll start with you, Joslyn. I found, anyway, when seeing this film, was rich with complex characters, but I personally found your character the most complex, partly because you have sort of a web persona, but also a regular persona, and then as well as this very sort of dark-rooted secret that's sort of driving you in your motivations for certain things. So I guess my first question would be, what kind of preparations did you do to sort of play out those characters? And did you draw on past experience, or was it just sort of character creation?
We did some research together, and Alison had sort of talked to me about the research that she had done, and I responded to that and sort of did a little bit of my own. And I think I draw on personal experiences really vaguely, like not.
Did you had a pen paper?
Like not really literally, like more like an A to G reference to get through something. So it's a little bit of both, like personal experience and like some nice research.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I know some of the more poignant or responsive moments, like when you're hugging Jean and really having to react very quickly, were really quite believable and worked really well. In terms of developing the character on set, was there, I mean, because the character is so complex and rich, was there any kind of improvisation or rewriting of anything from, I mean, I'm sure the character was, how heavily was it set in stone, or was it sort of a work in development?
I think it's always a development. I found it really helpful to have a bunch of animals around, because like the animals really helped me. Like whenever I felt like I was stuck, I was like, what would just like a guttural like animal response be to this moment? Even not just like the big showier moments, but just like littler, smaller things.
Okay.
And then yeah, we had a set that was like very warm in the way that you could always like explore different things.
Right. And your interaction, I guess, with the other actors, was that very much, helping to develop the two characters together?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. All right. Well, let me turn our attention to Alison quickly. So, what I really loved about this film is you do have these wonderful layers going on and building throughout the narrative. One of the things that comes off very clear early on is issues of communication. Either with Jean's trying to get anyone to speak to him about obesity, which, by the way, for you guys in the audience, is a serious issue, and I really wish more people were out knocking on doors talking about obesity. No, really, it is. It's going to be detrimental in the future. But
could train wreck our whole economy, but not to mention.
The health industry. It's scary. But you also see in all the characters how they're all struggling in different ways to communicate with each other, and for me, what I found interesting at that extreme was how each of them sort of approached their challenges in different ways. In some cases, it would be sort of an explosive response. Gene's reaction to his ex and just, I'm not leaving the couch, and not refusing, and that's how if you're not if we can't communicate, this is my only chance of response. And Titty reaching out via the internet, but also just randomly inviting Gene to spend the night just because he needs someone to reach out to and connect with. So where did this sort of idea blossom for you, this idea of creating these characters who are struggling to do?
I think that you might be the first person who helped me understand where the movie came from. Like right now in this moment, that's so hilarious. Because rural root films. Yeah, well, I grew up in a very like rural area where I was had like no connection to anybody around me. Like my mom was like an artist and sculptor. My dad was a doctor, but we lived in this area where there was nobody. Like most people in the community were employed like at the insurance companies in Hartford, Connecticut, I lived in Connecticut, or Pratt and Whitney Aircraft, or like so like I didn't I don't know, I just always felt so cut off and isolated. Maybe a lot of people who grew up, you know, who end up being artists like you too in Washington. Were you in Seattle?
Yeah, outside.
Or outside Seattle, yeah. But I could imagine you being a little similar too. Like when you sort of have an artistic bent and you grow up in a, I don't know, like my best friend, her dad was a truck driver and she would just always, I always just felt like the weirdo or the strange person, and I would try to like dumb down or act normal, or I don't know, like.
Right.
So I was in a
Well,
community where I felt
you
totally
see a lot of artists internalize a lot more, and then just what they project out is just sort of trying to fit in, but not really sensing that they do fit in.
yeah.
So, and that does come across a lot.
I mean, I think if I had grown up in a city, I might have had a very different childhood. Like there might have been a more artsy or odd feeling kids like me. Yeah, so I think I did feel very isolated in a mental, internal, emotional way. And I would just sort of, you know, I had this huge rock. I grew up on what used to be a farm, and there was like fields and woods all around us, and there was this massive rock in the ground. And I used to like go and sit on this rock and get confused as to whether I was the rock or the rock was me. Like it would just like personify this rock. It would become alive. And we had like 9 sheep, and I would spend my whole summer like with these sheep, and they had like anyway. So I was like pretty close to the sheep. so I think I tend to write characters who are pretty isolated. Isolated is a catchphrase, but who just don't really like connect with other people. And I'm also very fascinated by characters who don't have a social filter. You know, so they're one of the earliest, when this idea first started germinating for me, it started with the Jean character, who is someone who doesn't have a social filter, who's like has these obsessions, you know, the childhood obesity epidemic, and in Ginger's case, the factory farming. But he doesn't have I love people who just like say who say all the things that we want to be saying but don't dare to say. So like you who think, oh, this is a terrible crisis, we need to be talking about this, but like, would you really like go up to someone who's like giving a, you know, supersized 7-Eleven soda, whatever, to their already, you know, overweight child, and like, well, you probably wouldn't say something, but Jean would.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but you might be thinking it. So I love characters who will say things that we're all thinking of saying. And then she has a limp too. For example, I used to be obsessed with limps. I would like drag a leg around. My mom would say, "Honey, don't stop limping, and people are gonna," you know. But I just loved limps, and I love how he's just like, "Hey, where'd you get that limp?" You're not supposed to ask that. Like one of my best friends in college had a massive limp from a dislocated hip in an ice skating accident when he was 8, and I always wanted to ask him, and I never dared to like a 20th year college reunion.
Wow.
Asked him about that limp. But Jean asks her right away, like,
Right.
"Where'd you get that limp?" And people have said that a couple of films I've made before, they're like, "Oh, we love how those characters say things that like you think of saying, you just don't dare."
Right.
Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent,
Yeah.
but that's all right. That's what this is for.
Well, it's still staying sort of on the topic of communication, but also bringing in animals, because you brought it up, and also it is important to the film. And one of the things that I found really interesting was both Ginger's interaction with her pig, and then of course the animal rights activists and their drive, and how driven they are to rescue these pigs. But what I found really interesting in your film was how a lot of the characters reflect onto animals. I mean, you have Titty saying, you know, I am an owl, and he's cowering down in this really bizarre owl position. And then Jean, like, towards the end, like, allowing himself to be wrapped around in fake furs and sweaters and sort of put on this sort of layered animal look. But for me, what I found really interesting is how, and this goes back to communications, is how people communicate with animals, or at least want to communicate with animals, especially a lot of those who do sort of feel secluded from society. They will have like pets and sort of lavish affection and communicate with their animals and feel as if their animals are communicating back to them.
Well, they are.
Yeah.
The animals are communicating. It's just nonverbal. But we tend to underrate nonverbal communication.
Right. But
and also we think like animals are less intelligent. Like, oh well, it's almost because like we think animals are somehow like lesser, and that I feel like humans feel like, well, we can dominate animals. We can be like the top dog in the chain of species just because we're smarter, and we're assuming we're smarter maybe because we have language, maybe. But anyway.
No, I mean I agree with you.
We underrate other forms.
I mean, I had a dog growing up, and oh my god, I mean, I tell people all the time, I was like, I would rather have a dog than have to talk to people, most days of the week. I mean, I think it's and I think a lot, people get also that sense of affection and what they're missing a lot of times from their lives that they're not.
Well, animals know how to live totally in the moment, where we're always so projected towards the future or the past, whereas an animal is really quite in the moment. And that's part of why we cast Joslyn too, because Joslyn had made these videos, herself. He made a short film also, and then like music video. But anyway, I could just see she had a real deep interest and connection with animals, like her dog, and we were like, she's the one, because she had a natural. I mean, what do you think about animal? I don't know,
I remember the first time that we spoke about this movie, I just started fostering like a really difficult pet, and I was like, yes, this is just what I'm feeling like with my dog. Like, I feel like so close to this dog because he is so angry and like so like in the moment, yes, but also just like not able to live right, like just in his own way, and like so damaged and like so angry that he can't like fit in, like he can't really, he's like not willing to, it's so weird to say this around a dog, but it's like he's not willing to like meet me halfway on anything. Like he's just like destroying everything I own and like eating things and like just but not eating food and like tearing things up and biting people and getting me in trouble and getting himself in trouble. And I think that he's good inside, or I wouldn't put myself through all that.
Has he gotten bitter?
A little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, that hit home with me right away from the first time.
Well, and even your character is kind of like that, because she can't, like, that's the thing, when you've been damaged that way, like, you don't really just, like, get better. It's like, oh, wow, well, things aren't that bad anymore, so, like, now let's just be normal and be fine. And it's like, you can't actually just be fine. Like, her character is really all about that. And that's part of what I was, ultimately, the movie became about that, about my mother's cousin Ginger, who it's dedicated to, who's a victim of awful, childhood incest by stepfather, and it's just you don't really recover. It's just how something gets stolen from you, and her character Ginger has had her innocence stolen, and her ability to be intimate with someone, her sexuality is stolen from her. So I really want to explore what that's like to have those things stolen. From
and it does. It comes through very nicely.
Yeah. And that's, of course, why she dresses him in furs. Cause she's, like, trying to make him approachable, trying to, she's attempting to be intimate with him, and by, like, dressing him up as an animal, which is something she's comfortable with. But it doesn't quite work. Yeah.
All right, well, let me throw it out to the audience here. You're all looking so excited about this. So I've got questions to talk about. So if you've got a question, see a hand, and I guess just make sure to notify if you're wanting to ask the question to Alison or Joslyn, so that there's no confusion. Questions? Yes.
I don't have a question.
Okay.
I just want to say the movie works so well that there's really not a lot of questions, because you've been thoroughly involved in it, and you just become involved in the story, and it's real, and you're totally engaged. So there's not much to ask about it. You just experience it. It's very deep, and I think it's going to resonate down the road for you also.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes.
Did you and Jean have sex? I noticed that you were both lying in the bed the next day.
Oh, I think, yeah, sure. What do you think? I mean, I think it's not shown for a reason for you to, as this lady said, like experience it on your own sort of terms. And it's not as though we shot a sex scene that was cut.
I think in our minds they don't, right? I mean, in my mind they don't. Did you feel? What did you think?
Well, I can really relate a lot to how you were, Ginger. You know, obviously you'd been abused, before, and that's why you were alone. And I could just really relate to a lot of your pain and everything. And so, I don't think they had sex, but I liked Titty better. He was a lot more real. And why did you give him the name Titty instead of having a regular name?
Well, I wish that had been more explained. He does have a regular name. He's based on a real guy whose nickname is Titty. I mean, his real name is Edward. But then there was dialogue to explain that, but it ended up feeling expository.
Okay.
But it would be good if you knew that it was just a nickname. Yeah.
Well,
But
I
he's a
figured
real
it
guy.
was. I
Hmm?
figured it was a nickname, but
Oh, good. Yeah, he's based on a real guy, Titty Tannenbaum, who's who got that name as a kid. And then, that dialogue is like when I was talking to this guy, and all that stuff. Like he grew up insanely wealthy in Toronto, but didn't know he was wealthy because he was a very strange family, and they're like more hand-me-downs. But when I was talking to a costume designer about costumes for the movie, and I was telling her about this character. Actually, I didn't say the name, and she said, "Oh, that's just like my boyfriend, Titty." Like, what? Titty? Is his name? And then and she said, "Yeah, you can call him. You can just find out, ask him about, And I called him, and I was like, "Where'd you get the name Titty?" He's like, "I'm a breast man." Ha 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 ha. Like he just had this strange, nervous laugh. Completely traumatized person. Like, grew up in this very dysfunctional, super wealthy. Like he only found out how wealthy they were because a classmate said, "Hey, I saw your family in Wealthiest Families in Canada" book. Like he didn't know. He wasn't allowed outside. He and his 4 siblings weren't allowed outside.
Yeah.
So they had to play all these outdoor games inside this house.
Wow.
The house they lived in. Just a very. He was raised as a bastard. Like his dad thought his mom had cheated on him
Oh,
because he looked a little different from his siblings when he was born. But then by the time he was a teenager, he looked the same. All his features popped out. It was just, but that was it. He'd already been established as the bastard of the family. I mean, you really couldn't make this stuff up. It was amazing.
Sounds like a prequel movie you got going right
I
there.
know, right? I know. So it's all based on real stuff. I just couldn't believe there was someone out there named Titty. That's the thing when you're writing, nothing you can make up is more interesting or crazy than real life.
it's true. Yes.
I couldn't believe this guy's story, so I ended up basing a lot of this character on this real person.
That's great. I enjoyed it so much. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Questions? Yes, in the back.
Just a practical one. It looked like you actually shot in a factory farm. Did you?
Oh, that's good. You thought that. Yeah, I talked to so many pig farms. It was very, very difficult to. It was next to impossible to film in a pig farm, especially because there's so much sensitivity around the topic now. And even though I had really good connections with Hatfield pork, I had friends who had family friends who were deep into the pork industry, and I could not get inside an actual factory farm. I mean, they're so toxic. I can't even imagine that I could have exposed the crew to that, but you really can't get inside them.
So where was that?
So I found a small pig farm about half an hour outside of Philadelphia where we shot. We shot in Philadelphia, and they raise their pigs in these raised these little wagons with slats in the floor so that the manure drops through the but like it's not that great either. But it's by no stretch a factory farm, because a factory farm would have thousands of pigs in one barn. So that was like a relatively good farm, but that's the only one that I could get into. Yeah.
Were there any issues with the scenes where you are shooting with the pigs? I mean, like when you were feeding the pig, were there issues like trying to get or was it just like food and the pig just came no matter what, or how was it? Yeah, how was it with the pig?
I just remember the one. Okay, so you guys remember the part where my face is like right up close to like the big huge pig, and it kind of goes like, and like the hair blows back. I remember I was like, oh, this is all great, like they're getting great stuff, and I like kind of put my hands to sort of like be cute, and I just remember Allison's voice being like, watch your fingers, okay, you just know that they can bite your fingers off, and I was like, okay. So I think you can kind of see in what remains me being like, because they were really scary, like they're super cute, but the big ones are so scary. And I remember being like, just really having to pep myself up and be like, be cool, like don't embarrass yourself, like it's just a pig, like nothing bad's gonna happen to you. But it was really frightening. And then we had a lot of smaller pigs, like the one that lived at Ginger's house, and they're like rough, they're kind of like big bruiser like kids that are kind of just like blood, like they just sort of like barrel into things, and like they'll butt you like on your ass, like they'll really hit you hard.
Aggressive. Yeah.
They're aggressive, and they like to eat, so like they don't always distinguish between like a carrot and your finger, so you have to like be really careful. Yeah. So
you put your life on the line for the movie.
Yeah, it was mostly awesome. Like as soon as we got it and like I didn't get hurt, I was like, let's do it again. Like it was fun and exhilarating, and it was kind of a fun night. Like we shot overnight, and it's one of those things that's fun because of how gross and scary it is. Like the whole
You remember
place,
it because it's such an intense experience.
And we should acknowledge that Michael is here too. He was also in the film.
Our animal activist
He was
Michael
really great.
is in the back.
The
The one who's willing to kill 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
That's right. There are no kids in the crowd, right?
And it was fun because there was a lot of people, and sometimes we would sort of just like always be seeing Ken Tucker and Ollie, and always be seeing Ashley and Alison, and like all the people that were there every day, and it was like really fun to have a lot of people around. It just was extra fun and funny.
Oh, at the pig farm?
Because we were like covered in. Everyone had to throw out their shoes because their shoes were like covered in pig poops. And like it stank, and the people were really warm, but they lived in this like really ghosty house, and it was like very creepy. And then everyone's sort of scared of the animals but having a good time. And we're carrying like little pigs, and then we're like, oh my god, it was really fun, but in the way where it's like bizarre. And also you're staying up overnight, so everyone's kind of like crazy and loopy, and
They were up till like 3-4 a.m. and then everyone's phones died.
so we were like
And we
alone in the
couldn't
woods.
get
with, like,
home.
scary.
Oh,
things.
wow.
Because a lot of people like they're on their phones a
Right,
lot
throughout
during
the time-
this,
throughout
'cause
the
there-
night,
there's a
yeah.
certain boredom that sets in. Well, and just like your phones die over
And we
time.
wanted to take tons of pictures, and
Yes. And so we were stuck like an hour outside of Philly in the countryside,
covered
and
in
like the
shit.
producer's phone was dead. The gaffer, people driving the grip truck, their phones were dead, and so. people
Doesn't this
very
sound like fun?
challenging time
Doesn't
getting
it sound
home?
like the best day of shooting?
Sometimes really like scary or negative things. I like them because you can really remember them later.
Yeah.
But that was an issue when we were filming. I knew we were going to film at a pig farm, and I was concerned that the actors not get injured, because pigs. That's the thing about pigs; they're not like cute and sweet. They're
No, they can be
quite
aggressive.
dangerous, especially the sow.
Yeah.
You know, they kill their own. There's people who are killed by their own sows because they're carnivores too.
Ooh, look at that. We've got questions popping up all over the place. Yes, the man in
I have
the
a
shirt.
question on the picture in the bedroom of the Titanic. I assume it was Titanic. I couldn't read the name. I mean, was that there just to represent failure and death?
Oh, that was on the wall of the set that and I was just like, we liked the picture. Like it didn't have symbolism, but it's interesting. I wonder if it worked. I gotta think about that.
Yeah.
Well, obviously it worked for me, but I don't know.
Yeah, sinking ship. I hadn't even thought. I just really. Well, it's funny because with this film, I think we were trying to operate on instincts, and not like, not process things through the intellectual part of our brains. So we were definitely operating on like just gut instinct. So yeah, that painting was like that. It felt right and it looked good. So now I'm gonna have to think about how it fits in now after the fact. Yeah.
Yeah, in the back. Nope.
To me, the film was kind of a condemnation of civilization because all of the characters have trouble communicating with each other. They are clearly dysfunctional. They're dysfunctional sexually, they're dysfunctional, verbally. They've all been traumatized or had some kind of abuse, within the family context. So, to me, the question, there are many questions raised, actually, by the film about not only the relationship of people to animals, which is a very clear theme, in this, but also the relationship of people to other people and how we have maybe done violation to the things that would come naturally, to us, and that, it is a function of civilization, that has brought us into the state of dysfunction.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's civilization necessarily. I mean, sometimes there's just like, for me, the movie's about healing, how like we can heal each other through just contact, like human to human. I love how you start with these three pretty traumatized individuals who, come together pretty randomly and end up, healing each other through contact with each other.
My question is, how did they become that way? What is the injury? And of course I see it all around me.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at kind of the backstory of how these individuals became the way they are, and what the relationship between that and the lives of animals and what we've done to animals and all.
Well, I guess what we do, like the animals, is kind of a metaphor. Like the animals are sort of a metaphor for the humans too. Like, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think the thing that I responded to most in that vein is sort of like the idea that seems so hard to come to realize that like you just choose your own family, like you can choose your own family, and like you can have animals be your closest family, and and people that aren't related to you or are.
Thank you for bringing that up. Actually, because a lot of the movie grew out of my mom used to always say, because my mom had a very traumatic upbringing and kind of a crazy mother, and so I remember her saying we would always spend Christmas with friends and she like moved as far away as she could from her own mother, who was pretty crazy and was pretty abusive, and she would say like, oh, this is so great, like how you can like choose your own family, like you can choose your family, and it's almost better than, like you don't have to just have your real family, you can actually choose a better family. So I think this movie, as Joslyn points out, it's about people choosing a better family, like even if they haven't grown up with an ideal family. Well, there is no ideal family, but if they've grown up with a really problematic family or a traumatic family, they've been lucky enough to choose a new family, and that's healing, a source of healing for them.
Yes.
I don't have a question. I just want to say we love the film, and I'm happy you're making these films. That makes me feel less lonely.
Thanks.
Oh, thank you so much. And when you say it makes you feel less lonely, do you mean, because, when I show this film to people, and sometimes I'll like, travel around the country in film festivals, and, meet total strangers who come up and are like all emotional and teary-eyed because they've like seen something that I made, and I know what you mean. It makes me feel less alone, because yeah, it can feel lonely. The world can feel lonely, like if you're not kind of don't feel part of that like mainstream thing, or if like you turn on the TV and go like, why would I want to watch that and turn it off again? I don't know.
Well, there's a quality in your films that is just not visible in other films. It's a very special quality you have. It's really great.
Oh, good to know. All right. Well, I'm always wanting to quit, so
No. don't
whenever
do
I
that.
hear that, yeah.
Not today.
I don't think anyone here
Not
wants you to
today.
do that. Any more questions? Time for one more. No, you all seem happy. Okay. Yes, last question.
You asked us where the movie was, and I think it was in Pennsylvania.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, thanks for yeah.
All your stuff.
Yeah. We filmed it in Philadelphia actually, except for that pig farm, which was 45 minutes outside Philadelphia. Ginger's house is like right in East Mount Airy, Philadelphia. So that's the cool thing about Philadelphia. Like there's every kind of location there. There's urban, rural, historical. Like we shot a city for the country basically. So her house was in like what used to be a farm, but now it's got like houses all around it and apartment buildings.
At our Brooklyn screening, we met the woman who lived in that house. It's sort of like their, not like pool house, but they're like smaller house, and they live upstairs in like a main house.
Yeah, it's like the shed. They turned the barn into their home. They converted a barn into this.
And it's beautiful, like this huge big barn, and it's like it has a very different feel than the Ginger house. And I hadn't seen this woman since she was like, remember to close the door, and like if you see the cats, like just like lead them away. And she was like, I could tell she was sort of nervous, and who wouldn't be to have like a bunch of people like in their house and moving stuff around and like, oh, we like that painting there, we'll leave it. And she saw the film for the first time a couple like a month in June, and she was really moved by it, and it was like really crazy to have. She was like, that's my house, like I was watching this movie.
She said,
and
I had no idea you guys were making such a powerful piece. You were just like downstairs kind of in the way and
breaking
like,
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You kind of being surely pretty annoying. I'm sure.
Yeah.
She was shocked that she was like, I couldn't believe, and she was like totally overcome by the I think it was the scene with the fur or the breakdown scene when you have that recall,
She was
memory
into it.
recall, and she was just
Yeah.
speechless. She couldn't believe that was going on just like downstairs in their house. Like, what? We had no idea you were making something like this. That was pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to thank you guys again for coming out for the Q&A, and thank you guys for sticking around, and thank you all for coming to the festival.